handwriting is bad. Sometimes something gets lost in translation. So I'm really going to talk tonight about John Locke, the Enlightenment, and the American Revolution. What was the Enlightenment? Maybe we'll start with that. I'm going to use a definition by Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher, and he basically gave this definition at the end of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a period roughly from 1650 to 1789, and he coined this definition in 1789. He said, Enlightenment is when human beings exit from their immaturity and have the courage to rely on their own reason, judgment, and wisdom to make their decisions without deferring to a higher power or looking for others for guidance. And this can be on an individual basis or on a social basis. So the Enlightenment, it involved the scientific revolution. It involved the rise of religious tolerance, the idea of human progress, of relying on reason as opposed to relying on what the church preaches or what the king tells you to do. And also the idea of human perfectibility, the good old liberty, equality, and fraternity that was one of the models of the French Revolution. So what does the Enlightenment have to do with the American Revolution? What I'm going to argue is that the political thought of the American Revolution is based on Enlightenment ideals, specifically on the political philosophy of John Locke, he was born in 1632 and died in 1704. So he was around long before the American Revolution. But he was in England for the Glorious Revolution when they deposed one of their kings, James II, and installed William III as their new king. So his second treatise on government, relates very much to Thomas Jefferson and his Declaration of Independence. And Thomas Jefferson was a great admirer of John Locke, and he had borrowed much of John Locke's language. So we remember this from the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now there's two concepts in there that I want to emphasize. One is equality, and the other is natural rights. John Locke also thought that reason teaches all mankind are equal and independent, and that no one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. So he thought human beings are equal and they have natural rights. Thomas Jefferson talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. John Locke talked about especially life, liberty, and property. John Locke was a social contract theorist. That means that he thought that human beings were born in a state of nature, and they were free and independent, and they had rights, they had liberty. But because human beings really have trouble adjudicating their own disputes, they give up some of those rights and they join civil society, and they form governments. They give some of their rights away to the government so that they can preserve their life, their liberty, their property, their health. And really the Declaration of Independence is really a demand for a new social contract. And that is what happened. That's what happened in the Glorious Revolution, and that's what happened in the American Revolution. Both the founders and John Locke both believed that when you start to fall under despotism, when you start to fall under the yoke of tyranny, you have the right to revolt. You shouldn't do it lightly, but you have the right to revolt. And both the founders, the writers of the Declaration of Independence, and John Locke believed in representative government. Your legislature especially, should represent the will of the people, the will of the majority. So the language of the Declaration of Independence, it echoes the language of Locke's second treatise on government. And one thing that I want to emphasize is that the social contract theory of John Locke should be contrasted with the pre-Enlightenment political theory, which was basically the divine right of kings. God basically appoints the king, and the king rules. But under the social contract theory of John Locke, men are basically free, they have reason, they give up some of that freedom in order to preserve their rights and their liberties. And why do I bring all this up? Because we live in a time when many of our Enlightenment ideals and many of the ideals of the American Revolution are in danger of being thrown overboard or being ignored or disregarded. We live in a time where there's of populist movements that are tending towards authoritarianism as opposed to representative government. This is especially true in Europe, but it's to a certain degree it's true in our own country. So I think it's important to remember that our revolution, our American Revolution, and the ideals of the revolution were rooted in the European Enlightenment, and that our American experiment in representative government is a great laboratory for the Enlightenment ideals, and that we need to continue this experiment. Thank you for your attention, Postmaster.